What's up guys, welcome back. We are running out of time for folks to finish up their Let Me Solo Him the Underpin achievements, which will grant you a feat of strength that you can no longer get once the new patch drops, and the Golden Godtrotter full transformation skin for our Season 2 Delve mount. Given that, we're putting out one more short video with our best tips, just like we did at the end of last season for Zekfir, to help folks cross that finish line. We already have a general guide for this fight, 20 spec guides, and nearly 24 additional demonstrations that Kaz and I have done over the course of this patch. Those are all linked in the description below. Be sure to check them out if you want a little bit more information. And before we get into it, I want to say thank you guys so much. We just hit 1900 subs on YouTube. That 2000 goal before the next raid tier looks very doable. I'm super excited for that. Thank you guys so much for subbing to the channel and interacting with the videos as much as you have been. If you're not yet subbed, be sure to do that and hit the notification bell so you can stay up to date on the Season 3 Delve boss guides that we're going to put out, as well as new Mage Tower guides starting in Season 3. So the best tip you're going to get anywhere for this fight is to bind the interact with target function. This has been a game option since mid-Dragonflight, and the game options now have a search function. You can just type in interact with target to enable the setting and set a specific keybind. My keybind for this is the R key. I already use Q and E as my strafe buttons, and the R key is very accessible from this home position. Mouse buttons are also popular for this. You could even appropriate some key from another ability that you're not actively using on the fight. Back in the day, whenever I needed a new keybind, I would always just cannibalize my mount button, as you get pretty used to pressing that. There are two huge benefits to binding this function over just right-clicking the bombs on your screen. One of those is not actually having to skill shot where the bomb is on your screen with your mouse cursor, which in WoW combat can be easy to lose. Additionally, if there's a bomb in the underpin's hitbox, the interact with target keybind is not going to conflict with the boss's hitbox, whereas right-clicking it can actually conflict with the boss model and just result in you continuing to auto-attack the boss instead of successfully kicking the bomb. Honestly, keybinding the interact with target functionality is fantastic for targeting friendly NPCs, picking up small quest items like Noble Garden eggs, and just frees up your mouse hand so you can have freedom of camera movement and occasionally player movement. Our next tip is going to be about Brand's curios. I see more and more people talking about how unreliable mechasaurs are for this fight, how they don't always go directly on the boss, and how sometimes it looks like they're standing next to Brand. Frankly, none of that matters. If you complete the fight or even do it for several minutes, you're going to find out that the mechasaurs, even damage strictly done to boss, are going to be the highest source of damage on the boss. That is just a fact that is going to hold true on any fight that's over 3 minutes. I see other players recommending things like the bouncing grenade, and while I think that's cool, and I wish we lived in a world where those curios were a little bit more balanced, the mechasaurs are going to be the best. I've done the fight 100 times. I think this is merely a case of people just trying to have this like counterculture opinion, or just trying to be different or unique, you know, kind of feel like they're a little bit smarter than the next guy. Do the fight, even if you wipe after 4 or 5, 6 minutes, look at the underpin's damage taken. It's going to be mechasaurs, like by a mile. If the fight's over 6 or 7 minutes, they're going to do 200, 250, 300 million damage. And while they can pad on the bombs, they don't target the bombs. They'll always go straight for the boss. And if they are targeting cronies, those cronies aren't going to be up for a very long time. Certainly not for a very long time if they're being targeted by the mechasaurs. And furthermore, on curios, if you're an attack power spec, you'll need to proc these by doing direct damage to cronies that are under 40% health. They might not spawn on the very first global, but they do spawn very quickly, and they're not going to die to anything. They'll be there throughout the rest of the fight. This is just additional damage that's going to be up the entire time. They'll do anywhere between half and 3/4 of the damage to the boss that the mechasaurs are doing. The only real problem with them is that they scale off of attack power. So if you're a priest, mage, warlock, or evoker, you're going to have to use something else. We'll talk about that in a second. But there are intellect specs that still get some benefit from them. If that intellect spec is part of a class that does have a melee spec, they do have a baseline amount of attack power that you don't see on clothies and evokers. Now this doesn't translate into nearly as much damage as you do get from attack power specs, but it still is relevant damage, and especially for the healer classes, the boss has much less health, much smaller absorb shields, so they will still be somewhat relevant and do decent sustained damage. At the very least, this would put them above the loot radar, which is your best passive option for the clothies and evokers. And even for Boomy and Elemental Shaman, they do significant enough damage. They will be a better passive option than the loot radar, which is, you know, roughly a 5% boost overall. Also, Brand's roll does not have an impact on how much the bioprinters or the mechasaurs do. They will do the same amount of damage on healer Brand as they do for DPS Brand. You'll see people saying that Brand needs to be DPS for the bioprinters to do any damage. This is just wrong, so ignore that. Now, if you are a caster class, even one that benefits somewhat from the bioprinters, the best performance curio you're going to get is the Biofuel Rocket Gear. This thing gives you 2% haste and movement speed every time you defeat an ad and stacks up to 30 times. The only problem with this curio is that you have to tag the ads with a class ability of some kind. It doesn't have to be damage, so that when you do defeat them, you get that buff. And you can even get into a very comfortable cycle of destroying 4 ads very quickly with the bombs after tagging them, keeping 1 ad alive, and then defeating it 20 to 30 seconds later, so you can have a nice full duration buff right before the next set of cronies comes down, and then you can deal with them, refresh that buff, leave 1 ad alive, refresh it 20 to 30 seconds later, and just maintain a refreshed, increasing number of stacks on this buff. Even if you're not doing that, 4 to 5 stacks on every set of ads is going to be 8 to 10% haste and movement speed for up to 45 seconds at rank 4 of this curio, and you're likely to just incidentally keep this buff refreshed by dealing with those ads in less than a perfect fashion. But if you're not into tagging the ads before you defeat them with the bombs, then you just lose a lot of value on the biofuel. This is why the loot radar is a pretty solid passive option. A 50% uptime on a 10% damage boost. Very minor shout out to the Kaja Cola. You can manipulate your gear set so that the highest and lowest stat colas give you the desired stat you want. But after every wipe, you do have to leave the instance and come back so that Brand can drop a new 6-pack so you can get your 2 additional colas. And there's even a couple rare colas which will give you 4% main stat or 4% to all stats. And keep in mind that 4% to your stats is going to be 4% of your stats. So if you have 10,000 haste, you're going to get 400 haste per cola that gives you haste. So it is misleading there. I would just go with the bioprinters, biofuel, or loot radar, basically in that descending priority. My next tip is to play a tank class. The tanks have to deal with the full amount of boss health and the full shield values that DPS have to deal with, but they do generally have to kick fewer bombs to take out the cronies. 2 bombs versus 3. Occasionally you will notice that some cronies survive with a little bit of health after 2 bombs, even as a tank. That's just going to happen sometimes, but they're generally very easy to take out if you have DPS Brand who'll even execute one every now and then. And the bioprinters and mechasaurs will help you clean them up as well. Important to note that tanks do take increased melee damage versus their DPS and healer counterparts, so you can expect 3 to 3.5 million damage per hit based on whichever tank you're playing. Also, if you're big into healers, they have severely reduced boss health, and the shields you have to break are about half the size of the DPS shields. So if you're a practice healer and you know how to do some damage on them, not a bad option to go with there. Tanks and healers definitely have an easier time running Brand as a DPS. Also, if you have a stable of alts across different armor proficiencies, it's important to keep in mind that cloth users take severely reduced melee damage from the underpin due to this weird scaling idea that Blizzard had. Male users will take 2.5 million damage plus per melee attack from the boss, less if you're a shaman with a shield. Then you got Plaities and Leatherwearers at 2 to 2.2 million damage per swing, and Clothies down at like 1.5 million damage per swing. Also, Clothies just tend to have better absorbs and more access to defensive buttons. You can also take a look at our DPS and tank tier list for this fight that'll talk a little bit about every class to help get you a better idea of what you might want to play. Spoiler alert, if you're a DPS, Shadow Priest, Ret Paladin, Windwalker Monk, go nuts. Those are of course linked in the description below. And while we don't want to get too in the weeds on this video, people do tend to have a tough time with boss positioning and where the cronies are spawning as a result of that. Cronies will spawn in the 5 closest available positions to the boss when he calls them. So if you have them in the middle of the room or at the side of the room but equidistant to separate parts of the fence, you'll come into this situation where you have 2 over here, 3 over here, or like a 1 and 4 split. And if you're on any of the long stretches of fence, you will often see that there's a gap between 2 cronies, which means you won't be able to really take all 5 out with 3 bombs aimed at the middle ad. Conversely, you'll see a lot of generous cleaving with the bombs if they're all spawned in the same small portion of the curved part of the fence. This is why people like to break the room up into 4 sections. You know, 1 curved portion, move the boss to the other side, deal with that curved portion, then haul it to the other side of the room. If you are having trouble with Brand baiting poor crushes from the boss and then being out of position before he summons a set of bombs or ads, what you can do is run 40 yards away from Brand and he'll snap right to you. This is another reason why moving generously far away from the previous set of ads to set up for that next set of ads is a successful strategy you see recommended. Keep in mind the boss will drop 2 sets of bombs in between each ad call. So if you can take the ads out with bombs that are already on the ground and then hoof it to a new point, you will get this useless set of bombs, kick them out of the way, get a fresh set of bombs, then the ads get called. Also, to maintain a good cadence of the boss bringing a set of bombs out, then the ads, then bombs, you want to push that boss's first shield just after you've dealt with the set of ads. The second set of ads is the easiest way to line this up in my opinion. Keep in mind that the boss will summon his shield at 100 energy, but he won't summon the shield if he's over 82% boss health. If you're solid on damage and can still break the shield after it, pushing the boss just after that second set of bombs is going to be ideal, because he'll bring up a shield, then you break it, then he'll summon a set of bombs, then a set of adds, and then that shield will come up about 5 or 6 seconds sooner on every subsequent shield. The shield is a little bit shorter of a timer than everything else being on that 1-minute cadence, so try to break that shield after the second set of bombs or after the second set of adds have been taken out. This will grant you the most time possible with the boss throwing out a set of bombs right before a set of adds comes down. Though if the fight goes on long enough, you will be in a position where the boss brings down a set of bombs, then puts his shield up, then you break the shield, then the adds come down, meaning you lose the opportunity to use those bombs on that set of adds. But eventually this will back up even further to where that shield comes up before the set of bombs, just before that next set of adds. If any of that makes sense, subscribe to the channel because clearly you have a refined intellect and enjoy the finer points of strategy. And my next best tip is to check the links below to see if I've done a guide on the spec you play, and failing that, check out the guides for the class you play even if it's a different spec. A lot of the recommendations are consistent throughout different specs. And this last tip might just be me, but I'm going to throw it out there. I have an enormous amount of patience for stuff like this, and even I find that after about an hour, I need to get up and walk around. You should be doing this anyway if you sit down and you game for long periods of time. Just a little break in scenarios like that, every 40 minutes to an hour, or just put a cap on how much you're going to try per day. A lot of times the progress you do doesn't really take root until after you've slept. This is just how our minds work anyway, and I find this to be very true on solo challenges and even raid content with my friends. So that's about it. Keep in mind the Golden Gobtrotter skin is going to be available after Season 2 ends. It'll just be like a 1% drop chance like what happened with the Zekfir Void skin. Now obviously 100% is slightly better odds there, and if Blizzard follows the pattern that they did with Zekfir, they will buff the Enderman's health just a little bit, but not to the degree that he's as difficult next season as he was this season. The player power creep will eclipse that by a good bit, and there's a chance that next season's relics are significantly better than this season's, just like we saw in Season 1. Season 2's relics are significantly better output than the Season 1 relic. But that's all I got. Best of luck. Sub to the channel and enable notifications so you can get that Season 3 Delve Boss stuff as soon as we put it out for you. Best of luck on anything you're doing as we wrap up the season. Let me know in the comments if you have any further questions. Let me know what you're playing next season so we can put out those boss guides in the best order possible. Like this video if you liked it, share with your friends that you know are still doing this. And as always, thanks for watching, and I hope you have a great rest of your day or evening. Peace.